At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey folks, here we are. Friday, October 7th here on the Phillies Talk podcast, the morning of Game 1 of the Phillies' first playoff series in 11 years. The Phillies taking on the Cardinals this afternoon at 2:07 p.m. on ABC. I'm Corey Seidman and he's Jim Salisbury. Been with you here all season. And Jim, now it's Game 1 of the playoffs. This is what the Phillies have been preparing for weeks. It's what they have their rotation set up the way they'd want, with Zach Wheeler going in Game 1, Aaron Nola in Game 2. When you glance at the pitching matchup, I think most people would give the Phillies the advantage with Zach Wheeler against like a mid to back end rotation lefty in Jose Quintana, but anything can happen today. What are your thoughts on this series heading in?
My thoughts are, I agree with you. In the big picture, anything can happen. One of the reasons that everybody was curious to see if the Phillies could get to the postseason is Wheeler and Nola at the top of the rotation, that they could be dangerous in a short series. We saw what Aaron Nola can do with on Monday night in Houston with 6 2/3 perfect innings. And Wheeler's been really good. 14 innings this season against the Cardinals and no runs. He's come back from the IL looking really good. So, Phillies, this is their first postseason game in 11 years. It happens in a few hours, and it's on the anniversary, the 11-year anniversary of them getting knocked out by the Cardinals, 1-0 on what I call Black Friday number 2 at Citizens Bank Park. Roy Halladay pitched his guts out and was never the same after that. It was the last, night of him being the pitcher that he was. I thought he, blew out his back that night. His shoulder was already spaghetti. And Ryan Howard blew out his ankle or his Achilles, and Phillies were never the same after that. So it's been a long ride back, and they are finally here as the 6th seed. But I think because of Wheeler and because of Nola and because of an offense that is a peak and valley offense with some explosiveness, they could be a very dangerous team if their offense is able to, have one of their peaks here in St. Louis. All 3 games will be on the road, but the Phillies played well here in July, and it's almost time to see what they can do.
Jim, as we sit here, the playoff roster has not been announced by the Phillies. It should be pretty shortly. So by the time you're listening to this, the playoff roster might be out. Not really expecting a ton of surprises, though, right? I mean, I saw you wrote the other day that Brad Hand is in play to potentially return. He's missed, the last month or so. He had been a key cog at the Phillies at the back end of games for them. Aside from Hand, who else is kind of in play or a question mark here?
Yeah, I think Hand, he threw on, Wednesday in Houston. I think he's going to be a go. Edmundo Sosa is the lone other question. I think they would like to get him on the roster because, he's got the speed, the versatility. He's a dynamic defender at a bunch of positions. And he, had hamstring, but he was here yesterday in St. Louis, went through a full workout. Looked pretty good. Won't surprise me if he's on the roster. I believe Hand is there, and it looked like Sosa was trending that way. To be, sort of the last guy on the bench. If not, maybe Dalton Guthrie would be the last guy. So, and then we'll see what happens with the pitching staff. Bailey Falter appears to be on the roster as a lefty reliever, and that would probably indicate that Noah Syndergaard would be left off to prepare for a potential Game 1 start on Tuesday if the Phillies get that far. So that's kind of the way the roster shapes up. It'll be, Rob Thompson's going to go with the lineup that got him here, with Schwarber at the top, Hoskins in number 2 hole, and the one lineup change you'll probably see, or you will see, is Matt Vierling will start in center field over Brandon Marsh, as Thompson goes with a right-handed bat against lefty Jose Quintana. He was the guy. Quintana came over from the Pirates. The Phillies were in on him a little bit at the trade deadline. He's pitched very well for the Cardinals in 12 starts. He's done a really good job. Not a big strikeout guy, contact guy, and tough on lefty bats. But he's a guy the Phillies can hit, and we'll see how it goes.
Were you surprised that Quintana got this nod in Game 1? I mean, it's obvious that the Cardinals are looking to counteract the left-handed sluggers the Phillies have in Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. They had 2 lefties in the rotation, Jose Quintana and Jordan Montgomery, both trade deadline acquisitions. But, they could have gone with Adam Wainwright, who's been there forever. They could have gone with Miles Michaelis, who pitched 200-plus innings this season. Jack Flaherty might have the best overall stuff. What did you make of this decision to go with Quintana in Game 1?
Well, like I said, he's pitched well down the stretch. I think he's earned it, and probably in the back of Cardinals' mind, they know Schwarber and Harper are there. Those are guys in the Phillies lineup you want to keep quiet if you can, and those are guys the Phillies want to swing loud bats. We saw what Schwarber did in that clincher in Houston with 2 home runs in that game behind Aaron Nola. If he can come out and juice one early. Doesn't even have to go over the wall. It can be in the gap. I mean, I really think that's going to electrify the Phillies. But Quintana is a very steady guy, and if he's locating, and he can be really, really tough on a team. So, but the Phillies have a good one going too, in Zach Wheeler. This is a guy that has waited for this moment for a long time. Has never pitched in a postseason game. Aaron Nola has never pitched in a postseason game. Wheeler is pretty much had his best fastball of the season last few starts as he's come off the IL, and that's what it all starts there for him. Power fastball, ride it through the zone, put it in good spots. Everything kind of comes off that. So he's got confidence against this team. Arenado and Goldschmidt tapered off a little bit in September, but Albert Pujols, is hot. So there's a lot of tough outs in that Cardinals lineup, Edmonds and Carlson. So Wheeler, though, I believe is on top of his game and certainly ready for this assignment.
Yeah, Pujols, it's more than just like a cool story to end his career. After August 10th, he hit .324 with an OPS over 1,100 and 17 home runs. So he's been for the last 2 months, he's been the Albert Pujols of old, which is very unexpected, especially in 2022 after the last few seasons how they've gone.
When the Phillies were in here July 1st, he was just pinch hitting. He hit a home run in that series, but he was just pinch hitting at that time. And there had been talk, like in the previous days, that he'd come back to the Cardinals for his little victory lap, little farewell tour, I guess maybe a better way to put it. And there was talk that he might retire. I mean, they're glad he did, and he's been a big lift. And he's enjoyed that personal triumph with getting over 700 home runs.
Yeah, this has been much more than a farewell tour. You referenced that Goldschmidt and Arenado kind of tailed off in September. They're both still top 5 MVP candidates. I think Goldschmidt is still the NL favorite to win MVP, which just speaks to how consistently awesome they were from day one, really until September 1st. The Cardinals did not really have many high-intensity, high-pressure games in the month of September. They led their division by at least 6 games every day after August 24th. So the last 3 weeks of the season, they'd sit Goldschmidt this day, they'd sit Arenado this day, they'd sit Tommy Edman this day, while most of the National League playoff contenders were going all out every day to try to win. The Phillies and the other wild card teams trying to sew up spots. You had the Braves and Mets fighting for the NL East. Does any of that matter to you? Do you think that that can play into how prepared a team feels going into Game 1 versus a team that might be a little more rusty from not having, been playing the equivalent of baseball for weeks?
Yeah, there are examples on both sides. Teams that have had to scratch and claw to get in, and then they come into the postseason tournament sharp, and it reflects in their play. And there are, teams that maybe have a bit of a time off and then just can't get it going again. But there's also examples of teams that fight and claw and then, have nothing left in the postseason, and examples of teams that coast through the final days of September, get some time off, and then come out and are shot out of a cannon. So I think it's all case by case. Given your druthers, you'd love to sew up your division, get your guys rest, and get your pitching in order, and come into the postseason. But I do think I am a believer that baseball is like no other sport. It's an everyday sport. These guys are wired to play every day, really, and be on the field every day from mid-February, and with a day off sprinkled in here and there. So I think it's good to keep playing high-intensity games and take that right into the postseason. And certainly the Phillies played high-intensity games in the month of September. They teetered a little bit here and there, but they put together some really good wins when they had to lock this down. I mean, I know Washington was a grossly inferior opponent, but Phillies still had to go out there and win and bounce back, especially after a tough loss in that series on was it Saturday afternoon, and then they went into Houston in the game that really mattered. And that was the night they had to put it away, Monday night, because you had Verlander, and you knew he was going to be throwing 115 miles an hour trying to lock up that Cy Young on Tuesday night, and that's essentially what he did. So as much as it's nice to get a little rest and get your pitching in order, I'd rather come in playing and scratching and continuing that momentum. And that's where the Phillies are. And they kind of have the best of both worlds. They had to do that, and they were able to set up their pitching where Wheeler and Nola are on their regular day and ready to go. And both of them got some rest down the stretch. Wheeler when he was on the IL, and Nola because they had pretty much every Monday was an off day in September. And they really kept an eye on getting him that extra day whenever they could throughout the second half. And, I think it showed. He had he had a terrific ERA in the month of September, and he kind of changed that narrative about wearing down in September. So those two guys are ready to go. The offense, like I mentioned, is so hot and cold. They really, I think I always believe in early runs. I just think it does wonders to a team mentally. It would be great if they could go out just, because this is a lot of guys' first playoff experience. It would be great if they could score some early runs. I think that would build some early confidence and maybe settle things down a little bit,
Yeah, it sure would. Looking at like the first inning, for example, Rhys Hoskins, who's likely going to bat second, he's reached base in more than half of his career plate appearances against Quintana, 8 out of 15. He has a homer. Schwarber and Harper struggled. They're a combined 1 for 12 with 5 Ks. But yeah, we saw Monday.
There's your answer on Quintana.
Right, yeah. But, look back to Monday when the Phillies had their clincher. Schwarber starts that game, first pitch homer. That certainly set the tone for that game. I'm sure that it resulted in everybody else in the dugout breathing a collective sigh of relief. And to your point, yeah, the Phillies didn't clinch until game 160, yet they entered this series with the 1-2 they'd won in the rotation and with a healthy and rested back end of the bullpen, which is pretty important as well. So going into game 1 here, just looking at, obviously one of the keys for the Cardinals is Goldschmidt and Arenado. They're a combined 16 for 72 against Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola with no home runs, a combined 222 in those 72 at-bats with no home runs against the Phillies' top 2 arms. That's going to be a major key in this series. But the Cardinals have a lot of other players who can beat you, like Brendan Donovan, who's ended the season leading off for them, finished with a 390 on base percentage. He's going to be in the mix for NL Rookie of the Year. The back end of that St. Louis bullpen with Helsley and Giovanni Gallegos, one of the best in the National League. So, this is going to be a really challenging series. Maybe not quite as challenging as like facing Scherzer and DeGrom in games 1 and 2 if the Phillies drew the Mets. But the Cardinals, they went 93 and 69 for a reason. They're in the playoffs every year for a reason. Organizationally, pretty much as good as it gets.
Yeah, you mentioned Helsley at the back of the game. He was one of the best closers I saw all season. Real power stuff, attack mentality, and that leads me to the Phillies bullpen. Um, if I have, you have concerns about the Phillies when you see them every day. You see all their warts. You see how the offense can disappear at times. You can see how big velocity eats up the lineup at times, the batting order. Defense is always a concern with this team. The last road trip of the season, Chicago and Washington, the defense was not good. So that's always in the back of your mind. If they start kicking the ball around, they're in big trouble. I mean, playing good defense is absolutely imperative. And then, another concern of mine would be the bullpen. Their June revival was led by, the managerial change I thought had a lot to do with it, just the shock value. And then this calming voice comes in, and Rob Thompson does a heck of a job. They win 8 in a row under him. They built some confidence, and Schwarber put the team on his back, and Hoskins was right there as well. So those were real big keys in the June turnaround. But the emergence of the bullpen from that time on was huge as well. And down the stretch, I thought the bullpen started to take on water a little bit. There was some fatigue. Hand got hurt. But Sir Anthony got hurt. They both spent some time on the IL. But I thought fatigue was a big issue. And it showed in the walks were up. The command was down. David Robertson came on board. I thought he's a high mileage guy. I thought he showed some signs of fatigue. So you saw command issues, control issues in hand, maybe for reasons of injury. Sir Anthony coming back from injury, maybe for reasons of fatigue, and Robertson as well, maybe for reasons of just a long season and fatigue. So those command and control issues, late in games really concern you about the bullpen. The bright spot in the bullpen is Jose Alvarado. He's been terrific. He has found his confidence. He's thrown 100 with that sink. He's got the cutter going, and he's thrown a lot of strikes. He's on top of the world confidence-wise, and I think that's why we've seen his transformation. And the big X factor in this bullpen, talk about serendipitous, is Zach Eflin. I'm sorry. Zach Eflin down since June 25th as a starter, comes back in mid-September. He's got a fresh arm. His knee is feeling better. He's a strike thrower. So, while other guys have struggled with their command in the bullpen, Eflin is a strike thrower, and he's given him a lift down there. And then in the clinching game in Houston on Monday night, he's used as the closer. First time he's ever pitched in the ninth inning as a reliever with a lead. And boom, 1 pitch, 1 out, 2 pitches, 2 outs. And then he has this mega 12 at bat, 12 pitch showdown with Mauricio Dubon, and he wins it, and the Phillies clinch. I don't know if Wheeler's going to be like 8th inning or 9th inning. I think Rob Thompson will use matchups to determine who he's going to go with. But Eflin is really big time in play in the 8th and 9th inning, and I think he could be a real difference maker because he's a strike thrower. He's got a lot of experience. I think he's learned mentally that it's still pitching. It's just another inning. Go out, treat it like another inning. But he could be a hell of a story, knocking down saves here in this postseason for them if they could get on a roll. So what a boost that has been. Just simply getting him back, and then getting him back in an area where a lot of guys are tired and he's fresh, and could be a really good thing for the Phillies.
Yeah, we see it almost every year in the postseason where a starter's converted to the bullpen late in the season and pitches in that role in October and has some success. You see it a lot with guys first coming up, but with Zach Eflin, kind of a unique situation, having missed all that time with the knee injury. Jim, first off, 4 months ago, who would have thought that the 8-9 combination for the Phillies bullpen could have been Jose Alvarado and Zach Eflin? It would be pretty interesting if it plays out that way. But there's a lot of guys on this roster, including Eflin, who are going to be playing in their very first playoff game Friday. Zach Wheeler, JT Realmuto, Gene Segura, Rhys Hoskins, Eflin if he appears, Nola tomorrow, Alec Boehm. You were at the workout the Phillies had on Thursday. Did these guys seem like they were loose? Did they seem like they were excited? I mean, what was the mood like?
They have been loose, since that final out Monday night in Houston when they clinched, because it was like a weight and a burden off their back. September was a weight and a burden, and then the previous 10 seasons was a weight and a burden because they hadn't been there and there were huge expectations, and they finally cashed it in. So I think they've been very loose since clinching, and they were loose during the workout, and they should be. This is a great time of the year. They're going to play in a great baseball environment. St. Louis is a great baseball environment. Beautiful downtown ballpark, beautiful backdrop. I mean, it's a sea of red. They love their Cardinals, and it's energetic environment, a day game. I mean, real old time feel, day ball in the postseason. But they're loose. I mean, Aaron Nola, 203 career starts, has never started one in the big leagues in the postseason. I'm sorry. Zach Wheeler has never started a game in the postseason, has never been to the postseason. Nola's never been to the postseason. JT Realmuto, Gene Segura, Zach Eflin. So a lot of these, and then you get some young guys who are wide-eyed, but that's where Schwarber comes in. I mean, he's done a great job with these young guys all season long, making them feel part of it, building their confidence. I mean, I see it every night. They kind of gravitate toward his locker, and they sit around and talk after a win. And have a few laughs, and it's really kind of cool to see. And they brought in Schwarber to produce on the field, but they also brought him in because they didn't have a winning pedigree, and he has a winning pedigree. So that's where some of these, I think the veteran guys, Wheeler, Nola, Realmuto, Segura. I mean, they don't have to go to Schwarber and say, "Hey, what's the postseason like?" They've been around long enough to know it's different, and they can draw from within to get through it. But for Stott, for Bohm, for Marsh, for Maton, and some of these other younger guys, Rhys Hoskins has never been there, but I think the young guys can really lean on Schwarber as a bit of a guide here, and I think they have. But yesterday during the workout, very loose. They can't wait to get going. And if I were them, I would feel the same way, because as the 6th seed, I think you have to feel like you're the underdog, and I think you have to have that mentality that that nobody expected us to be here, even though people did expect them to be there with a $240 million payroll. But you're the 6th seed. You fought your way in. Go out and act like the underdog, but feel confident because you've got a great pitcher on the mound.
Yeah, one area where the Cardinals do have a clear advantage is just in that playoff experience. I mean, they have 3 organizational legends in Wainwright, Molina, and Pujols. They have 2 guys who are potential Hall of Famers in their prime, and Goldschmidt and Arenado. But you jump out to an early lead in Game 1, and a lot of these storylines go by the wayside. So really anything can happen. Phillies and Cardinals, Game 1 is finally here, 2:07 p.m. on ABC. Game 2 will be at 8:37 p.m. Saturday night, and then the same time on Sunday night, if necessary. So here we go. Zach Wheeler and Jose Quintana, the Phillies' first playoff game since 2011. It was a very long wait for all of us, but here we are, finally made it. Hope you enjoy the game, and be sure to check out the Phillies Talk podcast. We're going to try to get them to you the morning after each game in this series, and really all throughout the playoff run. But thanks for listening to us all season. Enjoy the game. Catch you later in the week.